George Phillips has decided to run against, and it's funny, last couple of years ago, when Brindisi announced in June that he was running against Claudia Tenney, we were all like, wow, that is early.
Yeah.
And but earlier than that, George Phillips is challenging Anthony Brindisi, and you'll recall that he challenged for the congressional seat a couple years ago, maybe 4 years ago, when Richard Hanna was still the congressman, and George Phillips is on the line right now. Good morning, George. Let's try that again. Good morning, George. Way down there in Binghamton. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
You are fine, thank you. Great to hear from you. And you're a history teacher. Tell us just a little bit about you and your background, George Phillips.
Sure. Born and raised in upstate New York. Did my summers in college working in manufacturing. Went to Villanova in Notre Dame. I worked as a congressional aide for a congressman. I was a vice chairman of the International Relations Committee, chairman of the Veterans Committee. I've been spending most of my career as an educator in the Binghamton area, teaching in the high school, community college level. I've served as dean of students. I have previously taught in inner city schools. I've even taught in a maximum security youth detention facility. I've been a big policy advocate. I've done policy work as an economic advisor to the Jack Kemp Foundation. And since you heard from me last a few years ago, I've served as a regional director for Reclaim New York. Reclaim New York is dedicated to fighting out-of-control taxes.
All right, enough of the bragging. Come on, there. What are you doing?
Taxes and corruption in New York State. I did want to mention I left Reclaim New York on January 31st.
Okay.
And just to come back to why we had decided so early, I can't say I was following it tremendously closely, but Congressman Brindisi, I know he announced in June, but I thought he'd been raising funds even sooner than that. It is a sad state of affairs what we've gotten to with national politics. There's so much money that's required for these campaigns, and
crazy.
I think your show gives a great counter to that candidates can get on, challengers, incumbents, and make their case to the American people, and I think this is what it's all about, is trying to talk to people, and I want to try to connect with more voters this time. So we're starting early. We also have a lot of ground to cover.
Well, you're right on the raising of the money. It's a real challenge, and I think that once you get into Congress, you start raising money the day you get into Congress. It's crazy. So you'll be running as a Republican, and tell us what that means. You wonder today. You say I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. I'm all confused over what that means in this day and age. So you being a Republican, what Republican are you?
Sure. Overall, I'd just like to say that both parties have let us down. We have a $22 trillion national debt because of both parties. We have out-of-control health care costs because of both parties. I mentioned I'd recently served for Reclaim New York. Our family health care plan was $30,000 a year, and I think this is a failure on all sides. Republicans in general believe in less government, believe in the entrepreneurial spirit more so. And one of the reasons I'm running for national office, having worked for Reclaim New York, I've said, look, we need reform in Albany. We need reform locally. But Albany is so broken, is so far gone. One of the ways I could best impact change for upstate New York is to fight for national reform on some of these issues like health care, on welfare reform. I think people of upstate New York.
Would you get rid of Obamacare?
So we've already repealed the mandate on it, and I believe in a dynamic market of choice. I believe health care is going to be solved by more choices for all Americans, not less. I believe Obamacare allowed less choices, and if there is something that's completely unfair about it, is we're giving tax credits to some Americans but not others. Even if you have a good health care program through your employer, remember your employer is putting in $10,000 or more in salary that you don't see.
Right.
Then you're doing your premiums. So we need to have a level playing field. The failure of Obamacare was not the idea that we want to help people afford insurance. Sure, we all want all Americans to have it, but that big government approach just isn't working. It certainly didn't work in Venezuela. Upstate New York, look at us here. We're spending twice as much as Florida, and yet they have more people. And you look at our economic numbers here, we just keep losing people here. We keep losing family and friends to the south, to other states that are more pro-business, more open to the entrepreneurial spirit.
Madansky with a question.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. Back to the point of you getting in so early. Do you expect Claudia Tenney to run again, and is that why you're in so early?
Can I? This is going to be one of my questions, too, because also we expect Claudia Tenney to get back in. Her campaign still remains active, and the word, if you will, on the street is that Claudia Tenney is going to be running to regain that seat. And if that's the case, you would be running against her, a fellow Republican, and follow up on that and Manasseh.
Yeah, again, it just gets back to why. Are you trying to get out of the gate before she does? Because I know fundraising is a big deal, and with all due respect, I think last time you were behind the eight ball fundraising-wise. I think your other two primary challengers had out-fundraised you. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's accurate.
Sure. I don't want to talk about other candidates too much. Fundraising, we were decently on par with Miss Tenney. You know, Mr. Wells, he obviously had a lot of resources. But in that vein, I'm going to pivot and say I have a friend who's a car dealer, and he said, you know, I've got car dealerships all around me here. I never worried about them. I got out there, and I just tried to do the best I could in marketing my business. And that's my challenge here, whether it's Claudia Tenney or other primary opponents or Congressman Brindisi. At the end of the day, the buck stops here with me, George Phillips, with the Phillips campaign. How do I connect with voters? And I thought we were starting to do that the last time. I've got to say, I hate to keep coming back to your show here, but one of our best opportunities was your show. I hope we have debates on this show, whether it's in the primary or the general election. And I still remember the debate we had on your show. I was doing door-to-door in the Utica area afterwards, and some of our campaign team were, and they said, wow, we heard you on the show, and you did a really great job. So I think your show is one of the solutions to all the money in politics, all the people tired of this. Let's just go and talk and answer questions and have the debate.
I do want to go back to the Claudia Tenney thing just a bit, and I understand you don't want to compare to other candidates and that. However, she does have 2 years of record on the record. She was our congresswoman. So how do you see yourself, and what do you think of the job Claudia Tenney did? What do you think of Claudia Tenney?
Yeah, overall, I'll mention her just with respect to the Congress. You mentioned I'm running as a Republican, but I do believe both parties have let us down. And one issue that there's a lot of frustration from the American public on was that first budget that the president reluctantly signed. There was a massive amount of new spending on it. And I know there was a case made that we needed more money for defense spending on the Republican side. Democrats were able to get a huge amount in other spending here. So that's something that I certainly want to talk about, but whether it's her or other candidates, why did we get in this situation? Republicans are supposed to be the party of fiscal conservatism, and yet we busted the budget as well. The president, I know, said, never again do I hope the Congress sends a bill to me that's this bad. So I'd certainly want to talk about that issue for one.
I do want to ask you, back when you ran before, I think you struggled with the morality of I guess it would have been before. Well, I ask you, what do you think of President Trump? And President Trump, because you are you're a Republican, I think your Christian values play a big role in your life. What do you think of President Trump and the morality, and your thoughts on his morality?
Yeah, so overall, just wanted to comment on the president and his policies. And you notice in the email we sent out to supporters, we have Steve Moore, an economic advisor to the president, coming up to do an event for us. We'll have more details on that soon. But I look at his policies, and they have made a huge difference for the nation. I know some people in upstate New York said we're still struggling here, but look at the market. 18,000 points at the Dow Jones. It's gone up to 27,000. Look at the GDP numbers. We were at stagnant growth, 1%, 2% under Obama. We've been at 3%, 6 quarters in a row with this president. Every tenth of a percent, every fraction of a percent of GDP growth. These are real Americans that are benefiting from wages and salaries. One of my favorite parts of Steve Moore's book, it's called Trumponomics for listeners who want to check it out, is after that tax cut was passed, and Steve Moore's with the president, 5 million Americans had already gotten bonuses or salary increases, and he looked at Steve and said, thank you. So I do support the president's policies. We've got regulations. It's estimated $2 trillion are cost to the taxpayer each year because of regulations. A lot of them, I believe, are unconstitutional. He's lessening them. I do think a failure that we've had for national leadership is we need bolder ideas on health care reform, on welfare reform, on other things. And a sad part of politics right now is it does get so much into the personal. Oh, President Trump did this in his personal life, or this happened, or that happened. Let's focus on policies here. And I want to focus on that. Certainly want to engage this president if he's reelected.
You can look
past continue to go big.
You can look past the personal life, based on the economics of it, based on the policy, you feel?
You'd mentioned Christian for a minute here. Obviously, we have diverse listeners here, but if you are a Christian, then mercy is a huge part of our beliefs here, that we've all sinned here. So I'm not going to go out here and say, oh, this person did something in his personal life and whatnot. We do have to look at ethics in terms of office. If someone's doing something unethical with the office, then that should be called into question. But unfortunately, with this president, it's been endless investigations on things that he hasn't been involved with, and hearsay and rumors. So in terms of how he's acting in the office, I haven't seen anything that would show he's done anything unethical in the office here.
And I'd like to ask you just quickly, as a Republican, I'm assuming you're pro-life, and talk about that. If you could.
Sure. Obviously, people in New York, people who don't really even follow this issue, have had a huge wake-up call with this new abortion bill, and there's two parts of it. One that really doesn't even relate to abortion that people are very sad at. There have been protections in place for women who are attacked, who might be even injured in a car accident, who are pregnant.
This is New York. This is
the new Albany law.
New York
legislation, shaking everyone. Yeah, New York State, but still, I still think it mirrors federally. So people are very upset now that women are losing protections that they had. I know the law was supposed to be quote unquote pro women, but when you attack or injure a pregnant woman, there should be ramifications for that if it's injured their pregnancy in the child. So that's number one. Number two, I think everyone's pinching themselves and saying, really, now we could have a child born alive who doesn't have protection. And I know it was parlayed off the comments of the Virginia governor that now, we don't have protections for babies born alive. So those are things that have shaken everyone. As a member of the House of Representatives, the key vote is funding for abortion. I think there should be a firewall between the taxpayer funding and abortion. So those would be my sentiments on the issue.
How about contraception? Somebody's asking the question, what is your position on contraception? What is okay and what is not okay?
Sure. Americans are going to use it, obviously, and make those decisions. I know there's going to be federal funding for it. I'm certainly not going to oppose that. These are personal decisions that people are making.
Okay. All right. Anything else we want to add? I'm sure we'll have you in studio coming up.
Yeah.
It's a long...
Overall, just check out GeorgePhillips.us. We're excited to be out there. We're excited to be connecting with voters. We need bold solutions that can lift up upstate New York and lift up our nation. I really appreciate your time here, and we're really looking forward to spending a lot of time in the Utica, Rome area, connecting with voters. Again, check us out at GeorgePhillips.us, and we'll have some more information about the Steve Moravec coming up soon.
All right. George Phillips from the Binghamton area running against Anthony Brindisi for Congress. Thanks, George. We'll do it again.
Hey, thanks so much.
All right.
I hate to say this, and if George is still on, he can hopefully hear this at the end. By all accounts, everybody I've talked to about this guy, and when we met him and he was in the show, he is one of the nicest guys you could find.
Yeah.
Super nice guy. As a candidate, the phrase unremarkable comes to mind.
Okay. All right.
I hate to say that.
You're jumping right out of the gun here.
He doesn't.
You were hoping he heard that?
Well, I don't want to make it seem like he comes on and we're nice to him.
Yeah.
He comes on and we're nice to him, and then he goes away, and then I badmouth him. That's not what it is, right? But super nice guy.
Yeah.
Class act, right? Maybe that's the climate today.
The one thing to focus, the one thing I think that we should be focusing on, or he is going to need to focus on, is that if Claudia Tenney does come into the race, that's another Republican. She did not fare well in the southern tier. The thing to watch, in my opinion, is he would serve as someone who would split the vote if he's in the race and she's in the race. Now, primary, he drops out and he's gone. Doesn't matter. But if he were to stay in the race on another line, that would be a real issue. I should have asked that question, but we will the next time. If given the opportunity, would he? Because there's a good chance he might get a conservative nod or something, especially when it comes to his Christian values. I think certainly play a role there. But I will.
Can I just one more?
I will note your unremarkable comment there. Your assessment.
I almost wonder if this abortion issue, which is a state issue, and then he mentioned Virginia as well, if it's a better tactic for him, I guess, to take that up and say, I will stop a law like this from becoming the national standard? I don't know because.
But in New York, he can't control that as a congressman.
No, he can't. No, but I'm saying, but he if he said something like, "This is what happened in New York, and I'll make sure this never happens." Yeah. I just, again, he's a super nice guy, but nothing pops with him.
I would vote to remove Roe v. Wade. Is really where you would imagine that he is. All right.
You have to say with Claudia, whether you like her as a candidate or not, like she stirs the pot. She can rile you up. She can make you feel a way about a certain issue that'll make you react or want to vote for or against her. I don't get that feeling with him.